it a little bit larger. All right, so I'm going to, Tracy's thankfully gone through it already. I'll just kind of go into the nitty gritty. And it's important, I'll give you a little bit more of almost the challenges I went through for coffee, because I think it's important for everyone, and I'll go into a bit of more detail in terms of the challenges we see a lot of companies face today for whom we do the marketing. So I was lucky enough in the coffee business to have what seemed like an endless supply or endless number of customers looking for coffee machines, or users looking for coffee machines. Working now with lots of different industries, we see that's not always the case. Very often you have a great business or a great business idea or great product, and although your customers have that problem, which is why your business exists in the first place, they don't necessarily know that your product is there to solve their problem. So they don't look for your business, they don't even look for your solution, and therefore you're kind of left waiting for the phone to magically ring. And that's a nice thing where LinkedIn comes in, where it helps us to actually go out there and be proactive about our marketing and go find customers who have a problem but don't know, again, your business, your solution solves their problem. Now, before we get into the nitty gritty, before we get into LinkedIn, it's important to understand almost that, sorry, can everyone, yeah, I hear someone shouting out, sounds like it can help.
We can hear and see clearly.
Okay, good, okay. So before we get into the nitty gritty of LinkedIn, it's important in marketing, because that's going to shape how we run our LinkedIn and how we run our marketing, to understand the dynamic of a transaction and to understand the dynamic of business as a whole. Now, people often think it's like the great myth of business, build it and they will come. And that's you couldn't have anything very further from the truth, that the quality of your product, the quality of your service, the quality of or even the price of your stuff is very little to do with getting customers. I often speak to businesses and they say, we can't understand why they buy from our competitors, because we offer a better solution all around, we have a better costing structure, whatever it might be. But the truth is that companies buy from other companies who have better marketing, not better products. Again, just to kind of touch on the first thing I mentioned, that all those other things to do with your product are important, and all those things are there to retain customers and give good service excellence, but they're always post-purchase. Everyone is screaming to the customer that we have the best quality, that we have the best service. And the customer, of course, knows not on who to trust, because everyone's saying the same message. So it comes down to finding the customer first and having the best marketing in order to actually get the best customers. Your product is important, but definitely, unfortunately, secondary to your actual quality of your marketing. So I'll start with understanding why I think LinkedIn is so useful for businesses, and why I think almost every business, particularly B2B businesses, that's business to business, should be using LinkedIn in their business. So there's essentially 5 things which I think are attractive to most businesses, and I'll kind of go through each one and explain how LinkedIn is there to solve that problem. So firstly, this is the point I was touching on in the first place, is outbound versus inbound. Now, if you're lucky enough to be in a business where there's a lot of search for, and you're very strong at Google and people can find you through a Google search or through word of mouth, that's great. But for all the other businesses out there where you want to go find customers yourselves and they're not necessarily looking for you, you need to have an outbound approach. Now, LinkedIn or social media as a whole is categorized as an outbound approach, because you can define your perfect audience, or at least who you feel your perfect audience is, and you're going to try and reach them to say that this is our offer and this is why we think it's attractive to you. And the beauty of an outbound approach is that you're not limited to customers' knowledge about your product existing. Your only limitation is that customers have a problem in the first place. And just by virtue of you being in business means that you're solving some problem or another. So outbound is one of those things which allows you to essentially run at your own pace and go after customers. The other beauty of outbound, or any outbound approach, is that you can craft your audience to whom you're going to try and target. So when you have inbound customers or customers calling you, or you have referrals, they're not necessarily a perfect fit for your business, because someone's told them about your business, or they've searched on Google and they've looked for you, but that doesn't mean that they're a perfect customer for your business. So to give you an example, if you sell high-end bags and your bags are 50,000 Rand plus, and you have someone looking for bags, they might come to you and say, well, I'm looking for a bag for 100 Rand. And that's not your customer. Although they're looking for your product, that's not your perfect customer, because that's not really your product they're looking for. They're looking for a bag. You're actually selling high-end bags. Now, how Outbound is there to facilitate that is that when you craft your audience, let's say you're trying to sell to IT managers, you can craft an audience of exactly the perfect person who you're trying to reach. So you can paint your persona on LinkedIn and say, I'm trying to reach a person who ticks these 3 boxes. They're an owner of a company, they're in a company in the industry of, in a retail industry, and they have X number of staff in the company, which is signifies almost the size of the company and affordability. You're able to, through LinkedIn, craft your perfect audience and only show your message to that audience, as opposed to a spray and pray approach, which you get from either inbound or either like traditional marketing, like magazine marketing or billboard marketing and so on. The other reason I like LinkedIn for, again, particularly B2B businesses, is out of all the digital marketing options out there, LinkedIn is really one of the only ones which is crafted or built around B2B targeting. Now, what makes LinkedIn unique to B2B targeting or B2B marketing is that when you sign up with LinkedIn as a consumer, when you use LinkedIn, you obviously give LinkedIn all your business information, because people use LinkedIn in the context of business. So you tell LinkedIn what company you work for, you tell LinkedIn what your job title is. All this information you're feeding to LinkedIn when you're signing up to LinkedIn. Now, on the flip side of it, or the other side of it, not the consumer side, as the advertiser side, all these audiences or all these details about the people on LinkedIn are there for us to advertise to. So whenever we're in a B2B space, we're almost always selling to a very specific role, a specific person in a company. Just using simple LinkedIn audiences, which they have the data already, makes it very easy for us to go and find those audiences without having any audiences ourselves. We don't need to buy databases anymore. We don't need to comb through the yellow pages. We can literally use their B2B data to successfully target our end consumers. The third thing which I think is important to consider, and whenever I bring up LinkedIn, people are always, almost the next word that comes out is cost. LinkedIn is very expensive. Now, LinkedIn is no different to other digital medias in the sense that it is what they call linearly scalable, which means that you can start very slowly to test it out to see if it's something that works for you. And only once you see that it actually works for you, can you then, or you can then decide to ramp it up. So digital is, and LinkedIn is one of those things where it's almost the antithesis of old traditional marketing, where it was a big gamble whether it will work or it won't work. So if you're going to put a billboard up, it might cost you 20,000 Rand to put a billboard up, and that may not work. Now, if you're going to run LinkedIn ads, you also unfortunately have a potential that it may not work, but you can start much slower to test the waters. So the starting point in order to run LinkedIn ads in South Africa is 80 Rand a day. And you can run it for as many or as few days as you want. And again, you can really dip your toes in the water before committing a huge amount of money and testing if it works. And if it works, great, then ramp it up. And if it doesn't work, you can always obviously stop it at any stage. So it's a platform which allows you to scale as big as you want, but also to start pretty much as small as you want in the 80 Rand context, to make sure that it is something for you. The fourth thing, which I think is important, particularly if you have a product which requires an outbound approach, is to understand how LinkedIn fits in with sales reps, if you have sales reps in your company or if you've thought of hiring sales reps. Now, if you've ever hired a sales rep before, you'll almost definitely be like confused and challenged in terms of how do you find good sales reps. The number one business owners challenge who's had to try and find sales reps is that they feel that there's no good sales reps out there. And the reason I think most business owners feel that is that people, I think, particularly in South Africa, confuse the role of a sales rep or a salesperson. That a salesperson's role in South Africa, at least, is to go and find a company business. And when they've found their company business, is to go and close that business. Now, most places in the rest of the world, there's a clear defined role or clear separation of roles between marketing and sales. The true role of a sales rep is actually to close deals. The true role of marketing is actually to provide deals for sales reps to close. Sales reps inherently are not great at prospecting. And secondly, prospecting usually involves, particularly in South Africa, cold calling. Now, cold calling is a very difficult, very arduous, very long task where your rewards with time spent is often not well balanced. So you can get sales reps that can spend the whole day calling 100 people just to get one person to say they're interested. The point of marketing, the point of where LinkedIn forms part of a sales rep's function is to actually do the dirty work for the salesperson. The point of LinkedIn is to go out to 2,000 people every day and say, are you interested in our product? And out of those 2,000 people, identify that 5 people are interested in the product, and for salespeople to then only close or only spend time on those 5 people, as opposed to themselves trying to cold call the 2,000 people. So the point of LinkedIn is really to facilitate a company's growth through the prospecting part, and then through the owner or through the salesperson to then take those prospects and try and close those prospects into actual customers. And the fifth one, which we kind of spoke about, is cost versus quality. Now, is LinkedIn expensive? Short answer, no. Does LinkedIn look to be expensive? Short answer, absolutely yes. Now, why that is the case is as follows. So the 3 big digital media options out there is Google, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Now, all of them have the same metrics that one can measure them by, and those metrics are typically the cost per click. What does it cost for someone to actually click on your ad? Now, in Google, obviously it depends on many factors and many industries, but that cost per click can be 2 Rand, 3 Rand, 4 Rand. In Facebook, that cost per click could be 1 Rand, 50 cents. In LinkedIn, that cost per click to get someone to actually see your ad and then click on your ad can be in the region of 50 Rand, 10 times, 20 times as much as the other platforms. Now, that's what typically pushes people away from LinkedIn because it seems incredibly expensive. Now, the thing to pay attention to or to keep in mind is that the cost per click doesn't matter. The only thing that matters at the end of the day is what does it cost you to acquire a customer? Not even a lead. A lead's obviously important, but what does it cost you to acquire a customer? Now, like we've said, that you can craft an audience very closely or very tightly in LinkedIn. And the net result of that is that you're able to typically get good quality leads and the conversion rate of those leads into customers is usually far higher than what one sees on Google and Facebook. So at the end of the day, in terms of cost versus quality, I often find LinkedIn is one of the cheapest options out there in terms of acquiring customers. It doesn't matter that it costs 10 times or 20 times as much as Google or Facebook for a click. What matters is how much does it cost you to acquire a customer. And that's why I think most companies or almost all B2B companies should be trying LinkedIn because the actual costs are typically one of the cheapest out there, particularly at the moment when I think really in South Africa, we're almost like still in the heyday of LinkedIn where Facebook was a few years ago because there's so few advertisers on LinkedIn compared to Google and Facebook, which essentially drives the cost down to acquire those customers. Now, let's just understand what are we talking about here. Those are almost like my motivation and why I think people should use LinkedIn or look into LinkedIn. Let's just understand what are we talking about, what is using LinkedIn for marketing purposes. So most people are familiar with LinkedIn, being on LinkedIn as a consumer, almost the business version of being on Facebook, where you have connections, you can befriend different connections, and you can build your audience in that. That's not really not at all what we're speaking about today. What we're talking about when we talk about LinkedIn ads is using a company or using a company page to run ads off and then to target people outside of the audience, nothing to do with how many followers you have, to literally build audiences and craft audiences in LinkedIn itself to show these people in this audience an offer of your company, not from yourself. And so if you've been on LinkedIn before, you recognize probably this screen on the right more than the others. And this is almost like your dashboard or your feed on LinkedIn, similar to a Facebook feed. And your feed is typically populated by all your connections posts. So if your connections post something up on their wall, you'll then see it in your feed. And interweaved within that feed, you have an ad below that across your feed. It's typically like 1 to 10 images or 1 to 10 content pieces on ad, and the rest are usually connection posts and so on. Now, historically, ads used to take place here only on LinkedIn, and these were not very effective because they were almost separated into an ad section. And of course, people don't want to come to LinkedIn for ads. They want to come to LinkedIn to connect, for recruitment, and so on. As time went by, LinkedIn started to weave it into your central feed. So it's much less obvious that they're actually ads now. You can see their ads by a little thing which says promoted, but this is the most common place that people run ads on LinkedIn, and still one of the most effective. The other place that people run ads on LinkedIn are in the inbox. So LinkedIn has almost like an internal email system called InMails, and most people would have received some spammy emails in the past, but done right, they can be incredibly effective. So the second place that one can run ads are directly into someone's inbox, or someone's LinkedIn inbox at least. And you can craft the message specifically for that person, and typically at scale. And how you probably would have seen in the past, getting what an email is, you have a message which looks exactly the same as a message one would receive from one of the connections, but the difference is it has a little sponsored little headline below the person's name. That's how you kind of distinguish between a LinkedIn email ad and just a normal LinkedIn email. And again, these are very, very effective to run. And that's what we're going to hopefully concentrate on how to do and running those ads for your company. So that's the content part. So we're going to create an offer or a piece of content, and that's what we're going to show our audience. Now, the power in LinkedIn is not about the offer per se or the content, but it's about the audience. That's really where LinkedIn's benefits and attractiveness comes in. So I'm going to show you two categories of ways you can create your audience. And you can maybe think about this, how you would use this best in your business. So just remember that this has nothing to do with your profile and how many connections you yourself has. We're going to build our own new audience just for our company in LinkedIn. And it's no problem at all that you start from zero, because we can use LinkedIn's data to build our audience from scratch. So the first category of things are using LinkedIn's cold data. So you can target people by job title, you can target people by industry, you can target people by even the companies they work for, and you can target people by any union of this. So to give you an example, let's say you're in recruitment and you're trying to target HR managers in companies. What you're able to do is you're able to say, I want to target anyone who said that their job title is human resources. So that's audience one. And you can even create a union saying that they have to be in human resources, but they have to be, let's say you specialize in the mining industry, they have to be in the mining industry. And LinkedIn will then present you with an audience which will have people that only are defined by what you've given it, and it will show you how big that audience is. And now you're able to market to that audience. So LinkedIn is essentially providing you with essentially a free database to which to market. And these audiences are pretty accurate because people, again, are feeding this information to LinkedIn itself. No one's scraping this information. People themselves are giving this information to LinkedIn. The next set of options out there are what we call like the warm audiences, or maybe the slightly more advanced way to target people. So what you're able to do on LinkedIn, you're able to upload a list onto LinkedIn, and typically a list of email addresses, and target those people on LinkedIn. So if you've been to, in the past, a conference or something, or if you have a leads database that you've gathered from people coming to your website in the past, you can upload those email addresses into LinkedIn. LinkedIn will then match those email addresses to their LinkedIn profiles, and that audience will then be available for you to market to. This is a really effective way to actually go after a very niche set of people that you're trying to reach. The second option, which is almost always the most effective, but it does rely on you having a certain amount of people coming to your website already. This is where you link LinkedIn to your website. There's a little piece of code you put in your website. And what that does is it matches LinkedIn profiles for people coming to your website. So if you have 1,000 people or 10,000 people coming to your website a month, those people will now automatically auto-populate into an audience in LinkedIn, which will say that these people came to my website. LinkedIn will find those profiles, and you will then be able to market to those people on LinkedIn. And why this audience is usually so effective is that there's some brand affinity already because they've already shown interest in your company, they've been to your website, and there's definitely product affinity because they were on your website, which means they're most likely looking for your product or service already. One thing which is quite interesting, you can get quite fancy with these things, you can combine different audiences. So you can say that I want to combine a remarketing audience with a job title audience. So you can say that I want to target anyone that's been to my website, but only if they're also an owner of a business. So you can create all these types of unions to try and craft quite a specific and niche audience. And the last one, which is fairly newish on LinkedIn, are called lookalikes. So if anyone's used Facebook or Google Audiences before, they'll recognize what this means. So lookalike is essentially a similar data set of one that you provide already to LinkedIn. And what that means is you can provide LinkedIn with any audience you want. So let's say you provide LinkedIn with a list, and that list happens to be a company list. And this is people that have actually customers that have used your product or service before. You can submit that list to LinkedIn. You can tell LinkedIn then, please create a lookalike of this list. And what that does, it says, let's say assume you had 1,000 customers. LinkedIn will then analyze that data set. It will then provide a far greater data set, which is similar to that one. So let's say there's 1,000 people. LinkedIn will then build an audience of 10,000 or 20,000 people, which have very similar data points to that original list. And that's a great way to scale successful lists. Again, you can use lookalikes in any audience that's successful. So you can say, I want to lookalike a remarketing list. So anyone that's been to your website, you can tell LinkedIn, I want you to find people, not people that have been to my website, but people that are similar to people that have been to my website. So lookalikes is just almost like a fancy way of saying a similar audience, but a far greater audience size than those which you've looked like, which you've inputted in. Okay, so that's pretty much LinkedIn audience targeting 101, or in fairly basic LinkedIn targeting. What I always like to do is just kind of go through a bit more niche tactics, or what we call super tactics, which I think are quite interesting. And again, if you're a little bit more adventurous, you can try for yourself. And I'll give you a bit of context or historical case studies that we've done before and how they work. So super tactic number one is don't only target owners, or don't only target maybe the obvious job title that you think. So when you target, most people want to use LinkedIn to target a specific job title, whether it's an HR manager, whether it's an owner, and so on. Now, when people submit their job title into LinkedIn, if they tell LinkedIn who they are, you can actually tell LinkedIn you're whatever you want. You don't have to choose from a pre-selection of available job titles. So you can say, the chief coffee maker in the company. You can tell LinkedIn that's your job title. Now, you might actually be a CFO, but you can define your job title however you want. And for that reason, it's worth kind of combing through the available job titles and trying to find all the ones that make sense to you, but or maybe not the most obvious ones. So, for example, a managing director and a senior managing director sound like the same thing, and they might actually be the same thing, but there are different people that call themselves different things. And if you tick, I want to target managing directors, that doesn't mean you're actually showing your ad to senior managing directors. So you want to actually tick as many of these relevant audiences as possible, because it gives you the greatest chance of showing it to your maximum size audience. And it also allows you to market to audiences that some of your competitors would not have thought to market to, and therefore your cost to market to those people is far cheaper. Last analysis, LinkedIn said there are about 2 million different job titles that people call themselves. Now, there's nowhere near as many as 2 million job functions in a company, but it just shows that how imaginative people are in terms of selecting what their actual role is. So it's definitely worth going through and finding, am I targeting CEOs, managing directors, senior managing directors, and so on, to try and get a maximum reach and a maximum bang for your buck. All right, super tactic number 2. And this gets to the heart of marketing in general. Now, if you can master one thing in marketing that will help you succeed in marketing forever, that's this, and that's relevance wins. If you can be more relevant than your competitors, your ads will always perform better. And what that means is that if you're marketing to a person, your specialty is marketing to a person by the name of John Smith, and that's the only person in the world that you service. Now, if you were able to reach John Smith and you were able to create an ad which said, "Hi, if your name is John Smith, we have the service for you," that ad, besides the fact that it'd be incredibly creepy and a little bit probably sneaky and that shut you down, that would be incredibly effective when received by John Smith, because what that says to him is that, well, we're a specialist and we're really specialized in providing you with a service. Just like, let's think about real case examples out there. You have First for Women insurance. Now, there's lots of insurers out there. Now, if you're saying, well, we're specialized in insurance for women, well, you're immediately endear yourself to 50% of the population who, when they're looking for a car or car insurance, they're like, wow, well, these guys specialize in insurance for women, where everyone else just specializes in, well, doesn't specialize at all. They just offer general insurance. So creating a niche can often help you really endear yourself that much more and become that much more relevant to your target market. Now, you don't have to change your business to build a niche. You can, what we call, build purposeful niches in your marketing. So here's an example of an ad we ran for a company, and their target market was any entrepreneurs or any professionals looking for wealth planning services. Now, this is an example of a non-relevant ad. I'll show you how in the next slide you can actually build purposeful relevance or purposeful niches into it. Now, if you're to give you an example, if you're a lawyer or if you're a doctor and you see this, it might catch your eye because it's slightly relevant, because you are a professional or categorized as a professional, but it's not that, it doesn't really speak to almost to your bones, because it kind of groups you as a category, but doesn't speak exactly to your name, John Smith. A better version would be something like this. So again, let's assume we're targeting an engineer in the first case. An engineer is a professional, but it's not that attractive or not that relevant because an engineer is just one of many professionals. So what we did for this company, we created multiple different verticals of different job roles. So here's one we created for engineers only with experience over 5 years. And we knew that the only people seeing these ads were engineers, because that's the only job title that we selected. And we also knew that the engineers that were seeing this were only engineers that had over 5 years experience, because that's one of the audience definitions or audience selections we're able to choose in LinkedIn. So we only chose this so that when the engineer that had 5 years experience saw it, they would have that extra feeling of extra relevance and almost that feeling of speciality, that this company specialized in wealth services for them. And the net result is that we were able to get 4 times as many leads for the same budget just by building these purposeful niches. Nothing else changed. And we did the same thing for all the other professionals in their market. So we did the same for lawyers, we did the same for doctors, which means you don't have to change your business, you don't have to specialize, but it definitely helps from a marketing point of view to look as if you do specialize and build these niches so that each audience sees something that's most relevant for them. And here's one more example, and this is in the manufacturing industry. Now, this company is happy to reach anyone in the manufacturing industry, but we purposely wanted to make it that much more relevant when we were reaching different job titles. So we said, if you're in operations or production manager in the manufacturing industry, then this is for you. Again, just to increase that level of relevance to catch that person's eye that much more. And onto the craziest / creepiest / most effective super tactic of them all is sniper targeting. And the reason for using this was quite different to general marketing. So normal marketing is there to create leads. What we did in this case, we used marketing to actually take a lead that we already had and try and push that lead further down the funnel to actually convert and become a customer. Now, I think everyone in sales has been through this at some stage, where you meet someone through a sales meeting and it goes well, and you're just kind of waiting for them now to call you or to pop you an email to say that they want to go ahead with your product or your service and that. Now, what inevitably happens is that for some reason this person doesn't call you, so you're left with two options. You can either call them or you can email them, or sorry, a third option, or you can leave them alone and just hope they come back to you. Now, the third option is the most passive, but not necessarily the best, because lots of things can come up and this person can get busy and they might never come back to you. One of the first two options of either phoning them or calling them is not a bad option, but it's a very selfish option. So what happens during a sales meeting, you typically establish a lot of trust with the person. You know, you have their best needs, the best interests at heart, and that relationship can typically go downhill very quickly every time you send them one of those checking in emails that, hey, just checking in if you decided to use my service or not. Because what those checking in emails actually are saying to them is that we had a great relationship, forget about the great relationship for a second, I actually want to know if you're going to give me money. And it becomes a little bit almost detrimental to the relationship, and that harassment starts. And then there's the question of how many times can you email a person, and in a nutshell, it's just not a good idea. So what you can do, you can use marketing to perform the same function, that is almost check in with a customer, but without getting that spammy effect, and almost remain top of mind with them and still be able to hopefully get the deal, but again, without ruining that relationship. So I'll paint the picture in terms of the context of this, and I'll explain how you can actually do it for yourself. So we met a hotel executive from one of our boutique hotels, and we were trying to get them to market with us. And one thing that this person expressed, this hotel executive expressed in the meeting, that his pain points were that he didn't want to rely any longer on what they call OTAs, which is online travel agencies. And that's the booking.coms and the hotels.com of the world. Everyone's, I think, been experienced to using those. The other thing, which was one of his pain points, is that he wanted to work with an agency that didn't work with many hotels in the same class. So he thought there was almost like a conflict of interest if there was one agency working with all 5-star hotels, because they would share knowledge and share industry information and so on. So what we did, we created an ad after the meeting to touch on every one of those pain points. So we said, are you a hotel executive and looking to increase bookings on your own site rather than relying on the OTAs, that's the online travel agencies? And again, we knew this was important for him, so we put it in our ad copy. We only work with one hotel per class at a time, and that's what we used to try and get him down the funnel. Now, creating the ad is easy, or fairly easy, because you can understand after the meeting what your prospect's pain points are. But now we need to make sure that the only person that sees this ad is the person that we have in mind. So how we did this, or how you can do this, it just takes a little bit of research. So what we did, we went to look at this person's profile on LinkedIn, and we saw number one, he called himself, his job title was a hotel executive. So we chose job title, hotel executive, ticked. Now that gave us lots of results. There were about 1,000, more or less, I think it was 1,000 hotel executives listed in Johannesburg. So what we did then, we looked at which university he went to, and he went to UJ. So we said, we want to only target hotel executives that also went to UJ. And that cut the list down dramatically again, I'm just using an example here. I don't remember 100% offhand, but call it down to 50 people. But that's, again, a little bit too large for us. We don't want to reach 50 people. We want to reach one person. Then we looked at, well, how long did he go to university for? So then we saw, oh, he went to university for 4 years. So we said, well, we want to only target hotel executives that live in Johannesburg, that went to UJ, but that also went to UJ for 4 years. And that brought our audience down to pretty much what we call a sniper targeting ready audience, where we were able to literally make sure that when he goes to LinkedIn, only he is served this ad. And it took 2 days for him to see this ad and convert on this ad, because this is sniper targeting gets to the heart of super relevance. And that is my last super tactic or trick for today. LinkedIn, I think, like all digital medias, is broad, and the use cases are large and extensive. And one thing I always try and encourage people at the end of it is that, again, I've showed some semi-fancy or semi-advanced stuff, and there's also some basic things. You're able to get LinkedIn to work for you typically if you even use the cold data sets that's using job titles, industry, and that. Just by doing that alone is a great starting point, and it's a point that I think most people are able to start with. And my last request, or my last suggestion in, again, using LinkedIn, is that marketing, there's no question, is always a risk. And if you're looking for assurance, like, will it work for me? Do I need to read another 20 articles? The answer is that there'll never, unfortunately, be enough assurance out there in the world to give you that confidence that it will work, because each case is different, each case is unique. The only way to see for yourself, the only way to start in digital marketing and start at LinkedIn, is to give it a bash. You can try for yourself. Again, 80 Rand a day, get you going, see if it works for you. And again, go slowly. And if it does work, you might have a sales channel that provides you with leads and customers forever. Again, at a fairly low risk of 80 Rand a day. So good luck. I am here for questions, and yeah, I look forward to answer any problems or questions that you have.
Sure, thank you, Mike. So are there any questions, Mike? Maybe Ellis has one.
No. I must say that every time I hear Mike, it just gets better and better. Perler on my lap. Mike, thank you very, very much. You know, of these little tips that you're giving us are just adding to you. I've heard you now speak, I think, 5 times, 6 times. We've almost developed a relationship. But every time I take something home. Thank you, Mike. It really has. Well, I appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Don't know if there's anything else in the chat box. Anybody else?
Very quiet, I think, absorbing all that information.
Mark and Edelman, sorry to interrupt. I think that was a fascinating talk.
Thank you.
I myself, an accountant, so we are always looking for new markets, and the old methods don't work anymore. So I think it was a fascinating approach to the situation.